Welcome to App Stories, a weekly exploration of the world of apps. Today's show is brought to you by MindNode. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is my co-host, the editor-in-chief of MacStories.net, Federico Viticci. Hi, Federico.
Hey, John. How's it going?
Hanging in there. I hear you have relocated to the beach.
I am sitting right now in my new summer house, so I'm going to be here for the next few weeks. I have set up a smaller, different version of my home studio, but I have the same equipment as always, so it shouldn't sound too different. And of course, all my iPads for testing and my Nintendo Switch and my puppies are here, so it's the full Mac Stories team relocating to the beach.
Wow. That clinking noise here in the background are the cold drinks that you're having out on the beach.
I am not doing a podcast on the beach itself. That could be fun though. So I'll keep it in mind. I'll see if I can bring my audio interface and my microphone and my MacBook Pro to the beach and maybe under a little palapa do a podcast. That could be fun.
We'll save that for next week, I guess.
Well, I'll try, John. I'll try my best.
All right. Well, so today we're going to do something that we thought would be fun, which is we're going to compare our home screens on our iPads. And we're going to go through each of our home screens line by line in landscape mode and just talk a little bit about the apps that we have on them. And I think there's a decent amount of overlap here between me and Federico, but I think there's some interesting differences when you kind of dive into how it's organized and exactly what the apps are. So I think we're going to start with mine today.
All right.
Why don't we start? We'll start at the top row.
Yeah. I have a question. I'm looking at your screenshot now, and I want to know, actually, two things I want to know. If you're separating apps by function on different rows, or if you use colors to sort of have an organization of the home screen that you like visually, or if it's just random, you put things, whatever. And also, I want to know why you use Time Page.
Okay.
Because that's a great app.
Yes. Time Page is in the upper left corner. The organization of my iPad is a combination of things. It's not by color, but it's by function and by... I guess it's a carryover from the iPhone that certain things I like to have that I'm using all the time, maybe a little closer to the bottom. So it's primarily function, but also in an organization where some of the things I use a little less often are towards the top, and the more frequent things are in the dock because we're doing this with iOS 11 or towards the bottom. So this top row starts with Time Page, and I use Time Page as my main calendar app because I like the way it looks, and it's just easy to navigate and see the appointments that I have in my calendar. I'm not a really good calendar user. I really need to, I think, organize my calendars a little better than they are now. And so I need to kind of look back at Time Page and then maybe reconsider it and Fantastical and the built-in calendar and see which one works best for me. But overall, I've been pretty happy with Time Page. I think what I need to do more is just kind of pare down the number of calendars I have to a more reasonable set of them, because I've got a bunch of Google ones and then some iCloud ones and the family and Mac Stories and a bunch of other things. And it gets a little messy sometimes. So that's Time Page. And then I have photos up there. I'm not sure why photos is on my homepage. I don't use it a lot, but I like to look through my photos once in a while. And I guess I do use it primarily when I'm doing screenshots. It's nice to be able to go in there and take the screenshots and dump them into an article. I don't use it for snapshots as much as I do for that. And then I've got the App Store and TestFlight because I'm in the App Store every day of the week looking for something or updating apps in the Update tab. And then I've got TestFlight because I'm always on a bunch of betas that developers have sent. So it's just handy to have it there where I can update it easily. And the final one in that row is GoodNotes, which is a handwriting application for taking notes. And I like to every now and then go in there and sketch out ideas and brainstorm about projects and that sort of thing.
So I feel like I need to ask this right away.
Okay.
What's the deal on your home screen with all these different writing apps? So you got GoodNotes, IA Writer, Docs, Ulysses, Apple Notes, and I'm not sure, like in the productivity folder, I think I can see Bear.
Yes.
And what is that, Drafts?
Yes.
And
Yes.
oh my god, John, what is going on here? And yeah, so like 6 or 7 different writing apps.
I
Like
do.
Google Docs, I understand. Like that's for the podcasts.
Yes.
Apple Notes also, it's for quick notes.
Yes.
But then we have Bear, Drafts, Ulysses, iRare, and like
All
why?
right.
Why do you do this to yourself?
Maybe I have a couple too many, but I used
Mm.
Ulysses as my primary text editor. So that's where I write everything for Mac Stories and Club Mac Stories. Okay. You with me so far?
Yeah, okay. Mac Stories is fine.
Okay. And I don't want to put a lot of other things in there that aren't, that's basically for any writing that's published somewhere. That's all that goes in there. There are no notes in there. There's very little else. So I have IA Writer mainly for when we push something to GitHub and I'm looking at someone. I want to look at someone else's stuff that's not necessarily mine, but I want to edit it. So I open it up in IA Writer because I like that app a lot, and it's more for editing other people's stuff and maybe mine, or looking at edits that maybe you've made to something that I wrote, something like that.
Mhm.
All right. So that's
Okay.
why I have that. Bear is for tracking sponsorships for Mac Stories and App Stories. I have notes for each company that I've contacted and all of our past sponsors with a little log as to when I contacted them, that kind of thing. And drafts, I just occasionally, if I have an email to send or something and I don't want to be writing it in the email and accidentally hit send when I'm halfway through, or do something silly like that when I put my phone in my pocket, in this case, I guess my iPad in my bag, I sometimes will write in drafts, but that's probably the one I use the least of that lot. And I think that covers all of them, doesn't it? All right. So I have a reason.
Right. Yeah, you're making it really hard for me to criticize you because of all the Mac
Yes,
Stories stuff.
I know.
So I will accept it. I will accept it. My iPad home screen. And by the way, I should say, if you want to take a look at my iPhone home screen, and if you're a fan of Relay FM and Connected, which is the other show that I do with Mike Hurley and Stephen Hackett, you should be a member of Relay FM so you get access to the member episodes. And in those member episodes for the entire month of August, you're going to find a special Connected episode where we do iPhone home screens. And in fact, this App Stories episode is very much inspired by Connected. And I thought with the iPad, maybe John and I can talk about iOS 11 because we're both on the beta. But if you want to take a look at my iPhone, go listen to Connected and become a member of Relay FM, which is a very fine network of shows and people, including Mike and Steven, whom I love very much. That said, a major theme of my iPad home screen is the fact that I'm testing iOS 11 and I'm writing my iOS 11 review, and I need to test Apple apps. And the best way to test the new system stuff that I'm gonna write about is to put them on the home screen, even if I'm not necessarily gonna use them after September once I'm done. But I think this time there's a good chance that I'm going to stick around with some of these. So Top Pro, there's really nothing too notable with the exception of maybe podcasts and calendar. So the system apps, because App Store, Apple Music, and YouTube are there for obvious reasons. This is what I call my entertainment row. But on the iPad, there's an extra spot, and a calendar went up there because it's easier to see. It's the first one on the right, so it's easier to see the icon and the date. Podcasts, I like the redesign in iOS 11. I like the Apple Music aesthetic that has been brought to the app, and I like the new Listen Now view. That is the main view. It's basically like a queue of all your new available episodes, and I love the way that it combines this Apple Music design with a list of episodes, and you can just tap on one and start listening. It's really nicely done. And the Apple Calendar, I'm testing it out for iOS 11 and to test the drag and drop features especially. And there's something about the Apple Calendar app that I've always liked. It's that it's very nice, very polished. It's so clean, but it lacks all of the extra touches of something like Time Page or like the smart features of Google Calendar. But it feels native. It's colorful. It's elegant. It does what I need. I'm not a huge calendar user, so every year I say, well, maybe I should stick with the Apple Calendar app. This time, I think maybe with drag and drop support out of the box, maybe I'm just gonna try and see what happens. So my first row is nothing too spectacularly interesting. I think it's just media stuff plus the calendar.
Yeah, it is one. There is one, I think, big difference between our home screens, and that is kind of highlighted by this first row, though, and that is that you do have more media things on your homepage than I do. I've got music in the next row, which I'll talk about in a second, but for the most part, my iPad is really just a writing machine more than anything else. I don't use it for much else. I will watch YouTube on it sometimes. I never listen to podcasts, whether it's the podcast app, Overcast or Castro or any of the other podcast players out there. That's strictly a phone thing. And I think that's because I mostly do that when I'm commuting and going into Chicago. So I usually have my phone in my pocket with my AirPods in. I don't really listen to those around the house.
Yeah, all right, that makes sense. Yeah, I do use my iPad for everything, so you can also see the home app in there and accounting stuff, writing stuff, all kinds of apps that I need frequently. Put them on the home screen. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you why would you have, for instance, the home app on the second row as opposed to just using Control Center? What does that do for you that you can't get in Control Center?
That is a good question, and I feel like I want to give myself more options to quickly launch the home app when I need to see what the dogs are doing in the other room with my HomeKit camera.
Okay.
So I thought about this and I realized I could use Control Center, but the more options I have to quickly check in on them, the better it is for everybody. So I put it in there next to maps in the same to the right edge because it's easier to find and to tap on, so that in addition to Control Center, I can also tap the icon. So when I'm in a rush or maybe I hear a noise and I need to see what's up, I can just tap on it and it opens the camera view.
Thanks to MindNode for sponsoring App Stories this week. MindNode is a mind mapping app for iOS and macOS that's a great place to capture your thoughts and understand how they fit together. What I like best about MindNode is that it gets out of my way so I can concentrate on my thoughts and ideas. MindNode does the heavy lifting, making my mind map look beautiful so I don't get bogged down in things like fiddling with the formatting. MindNode is cross-platform too. Start on iOS and continue on your Mac thanks to iCloud Drive integration. MindNode is easy to make part of your daily workflow too, with sharing features and the ability to export mind maps in many formats for use in other apps. You can even add tasks, do simple project management, and integrate both with the System Reminders app. Thanks again to MindNode for supporting App Stories. Yeah, Maps was another one I was going to ask you about because you.
Hold on until my second row because I got a few questions for you now.
All right. Let's go back to my second row, mine starts with music, okay? And it's on my iPad because the speakers are so great on the iPad Pro, and I love to listen to music on my iPad.
Yeah, but what's the deal with all the reading apps? Like you got Reader, Nuzzle, Reddit, Apple News, Medium. Like you have the Medium app installed, Feed Wrangler, Morning Reader. Then you got Kindle Pocket, Comixology.
Yep.
And iBooks. Like either you read a lot, but I don't know. Do you have all that time available for reading?
No, I don't.
Is that a folder of good intentions?
It's a folder of good intentions, yes. Partly a folder of good intentions and partly a folder of things that I just like to have around. I've got too many apps on my iPad, and I cannot tell you the last time I opened a few of these apps, including Medium, because Medium drives me a little crazy.
Especially the Medium app is such an odd choice.
Yeah, I know. And it's been months since I opened Comixology. The ones I use regularly are Pocket and InnoReader, which is migrated out of the reading folder and onto the homepage. And I guess, honestly, this folder, most of it should just go away and be on a second page, if at all, on here.
All right. What about both Dropbox and DevonThink?
DevonThink is on my home screen because it's something I want to use more, and I've been starting to do that for research material. So I like having it handy so I can drop things into it and refer back to reference material when I'm working on an article or something like that. I also will put PDFs in there, receipts, and other business type documents. And Dropbox, I just use Dropbox for so many different things, whether it's grabbing PDFs and Word documents to send to sponsors or getting screenshots and icons for Club Mac Stories. There's just a lot of shared folders we have in there for various projects at Mac Stories, and it's handy to have it close by.
My second row, I also have Reader as my RSS service, Apple News, because I like to test it, and I like to have a more generalistic news approach to find stuff that I wouldn't normally have in my subscriptions.
Do you use it very often? I mean, do you launch it very often? Because for me, I like the app, but it is kind of a good intentions app. I maybe open it once or twice a month.
Yeah, maybe every couple of days, like not every single day, and definitely not multiple times a day. But every couple of days, I like to check in what's happening with stuff that I don't subscribe to. Carrot Weather, because of the excellent update that they released with version 4. We had a review on Mac Stories, and I love that I can now use Weather Underground as a data provider. And not only that, but I can also specify a custom weather station. So there's a weather station down by the end of the street where I live. I can select that weather station, and I have the hyperlocal data in Carrot Weather now, while also having the new beautiful graphics of this app and the personality of the Carrot AI, which is super fun. So it's a mix of great data presentation, and great graphics and humor. So that is the perfect weather combination for me.
I like Carrot Weather a lot too. The only thing with Carrot Weather, I don't get checking the weather on your iPad though, to some degree, because you've got your phone in your pocket.
I do, and maybe sometimes I'm working on the iPad, and my girlfriend comes into the room, and we're talking about going somewhere with the dogs, for instance, and so I'm looking at the iPad, so it makes sense to check on the weather right there. Especially now that we have puppies, it's essential to know when it's going to rain or not, because it's going to be such a huge pain.
Right.
If it's raining, it's no fun. So I think I'm checking the weather more. And because I do, it's the same idea of home on the screen, to have quicker access when I need something. So if I'm using the iPad and we're planning to go for a couple of days somewhere, or maybe to take a walk, we want to know the current conditions, or the forecast, what's it going to be like. So
Okay.
and Apple Maps, that is a good intentions app for me. I don't use Apple Maps for navigation, but I like to take a look at its interface. It's pretty. It's so much cleaner than Google, but I don't use it. It doesn't have enough data for me. It doesn't have all the stores and like the points of interest that I usually search for.
Right.
And the navigation is not as good as Google, and the design is amazing. My dream mapping application would be the UI of Apple Maps, and the browsing UI, the navigation UI, and the data of Google. And I realize now that used to be Apple Maps, the Maps app on the iPhone before. And of course, now we add Google data in an Apple environment. That is no more. And now we have Apple Maps data, which for some people is great. It's not great for me. And the design is frankly amazing. Like, it's one of the best app designs on iOS. The turn directions, the way that they use iconography with different colors. It's just a beautiful app and a beautiful digital map. But it's not great when I actually need to get somewhere. So which is too bad. I keep it there to check it, to write a review, and to test drag and drop. Also, it's amazing on the iPad with maps, but I don't use it for navigation.
Do you use Google Maps for navigation on your iPad, or do you use your phone for navigation when you're in the car?
It happened in the past when I was on vacation and my phone was dead. And because my iPad has cellular and always connected to the internet,
Right.
and has a longer lasting battery, it happened on a bunch of occasions that we use my iPad for navigation. It's
Okay.
looks ridiculous, honestly, but it works.
How do you find a place to put it? Do you put it on the dashboard, or?
No, Sylvia holds it,
okay.
and she becomes the driving assistant. She holds the iPad with or Google Maps. We have this setup going on.
All right.
Sylvia takes a look at the phone and tells, because I don't really trust the directions of the way that they are spoken, given by Google. I prefer Sylvia to take a look at the map and tell me what to do.
It does help. It does help to have a human navigator along with you. That's for sure. I always have my person riding shotgun with me when we're on a trip too.
Exactly.
All right, I get it now.
So let's see what you got next.
All right. I've got working copy in there, because working copy is how we share documents at Mac Stories amongst the team members, and I have to go in there every now and then and sync up the various repos that we have. So I just keep it on the home screen where it's convenient to get at. And then I have Trello, which is how we organize and decide what we're going to be writing about on Club Mac Stories. So that's mainly what I use that for, although we have a bunch of other boards that we use too, but the Club one is probably the main one.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And then I have my app, Blink, because it's my app and I want it on my home screen. I see that you've got it down in a folder, which I get. I would put it in a folder if it wasn't my app. And then I've got iWriter and Docs. I would not have Google Docs on my home screen, but for the fact that we use it for the show notes for the podcast, because I'm not a big fan of Google Docs. I'm really not a big fan of any of the Google apps on iOS, but they are handy and they do work for collaboration better than really anything else we've tried. So, it's kind of a necessary evil more than anything else. As you probably know, App Stories is part of MacStories.net, a website founded by Federico in 2009 that's devoted to bringing you in-depth coverage of technology news, detailed reviews of our favorite apps, and personal stories about how technology affects our lives. Today I want to tell you a little bit about Club Mac Stories. Club Mac Stories offers exclusive access to extra Mac Stories content every week. For just $5 per month or $50 a year, you'll receive 2 article-packed newsletters, Mac Stories Weekly and the Monthly Log, featuring our favorite apps, collections, tips, giveaways, iMessage stickers, workflows, answers to reader questions, interviews, home screens, and reader setups, along with personal stories and much, much more. We also maintain a complete archive of past issues of the newsletters and the downloadable perks we've created over the years, and it's all available for you no matter when you join the club. We're coming up on the Club Mac Stories anniversary in September, and as in the past, we'll have some special perks exclusively for members. Club Mac Stories is a labor of love that we work hard to make special for members who enjoy Mac Stories but want even more. If you're interested in joining, head over to club.macstories.net. That's club.macstories.net for more details and to view samples of some of the work we've done in the past for members. There will also be a link in the show notes.
All right. So my final row, there's an app that I'm not really sure what's in their launcher. I use the launcher widget all the time, but I don't use the app. So I think this is the byproduct of some home screen reorganization gone wrong. And the moment that I was taking the screenshot, it was so out of place that I decided to include it just to talk about this. I don't know why it's there. I love Launcher.
Yeah, I was wondering that too, because I know you do use it, but it's one of those apps where it has to have an icon, but you don't have to actually ever go into the app except for when you're setting something up.
So that is probably going away. Next is Terminology, and I use Terminology especially when I'm working on a big story, because it allows me to mark certain words as favorites. So when I write a big story, I try to write during the day, and at night I don't look at my documents at all. I read other people's stuff because I kind of want to expose my brain to different material other than iOS, and I also want to kind of switch modes and think about something else, think about different subjects and learn new words. Italian is my first language, so all the ways that I can find to expand my vocabulary and to learn new words, I try them. That's why I'm a huge fan of being able to view lyrics in Apple Music. Sometimes, even if I know what is being said in a movie or a TV show, I turn on the subtitles just so I can see also the printed version of the dialogue. And so I read a lot of articles by other people. And when I do so, I use the share extension in Terminology. When I find a word that I'm not familiar with, I save it as a favorite in the app. And then once a day, sort of like a flashcard system, I open Terminology, I open the favorites view, and I go through the list and see if I can remember what each of those words mean. And I think that has been a great way for me to learn new words, to remember their meanings, and to make my writing better so I'm not using the same words over and over. And I think reading and saving the words that I find has been essential for me to do long form writing. So Terminology deserves a spot, especially in the summer when I have this big project and it's so important for me to use a flexible language that I'm not using the same 10 words over and over.
That's a really interesting use of terminology. I use it too, and I think it's a great dictionary application, but I had never really thought about it as a way of expanding your vocabulary through the favorites functionality that it has. So that's really cool. I like that.
So the next two, Trello and Numbers. Numbers is where all my accounting is done these days. I wrote about it in an iPad Diaries post. By the way, iPad Diaries are coming back. Of course, I'm busy with iOS 11. And once iOS 11 is done, I feel iPad Diaries is going to be so much better because iOS on the iPad is so much better. But I do all my accounting and managing the business side of Mac Stories and Cloud Mac Stories on the iPad with Numbers. And also, John and I collaborate on a bunch of spreadsheets using Numbers, and it's been working amazingly well for me, honestly. Like iCloud sharing in Numbers, not a single problem. So hopefully that will continue. And Trello, talked many times before, it's where our entire organization system for Cloud Mac Stories lives. We also use different Trello boards for different projects, such as the Mac Stories server, planning new website features, App Stories topics, App Stories website, collaboration for special months of the year, such as Apple's fall software cycle. It's a great way to organize anything visually. And finally, you will notice an iOS 11 folder. Do not, please, ask me about the apps and the icons because I cannot talk about them in detail yet. Those are betas of iOS 11 things I'm testing. I put them on the home screen, not to brag really, but because I need quick access to them when I'm referencing a new feature in one of those apps. Those are amazing apps that are going to get iOS 11 updates, and I need to be able to find them easily. So by putting them in a folder, by putting it on the home screen, when I'm editing, for example, say the section about file provider extensions in iOS 11, I can open the folder and tap on one of those and see what it actually looks like in practice and maybe take a screenshot. So that's my normal home screen rows. And the last one is empty, not because I'm one of those people that believes in the final empty row philosophy. Really, I just don't know what to put there at this point. There's obviously some reorganization happening. As you can see, launcher is there for no reason. And I got a folder on the home screen, whereas I would prefer not to have a folder, and the row is empty. So we should probably revisit this sometime next year when I'm not doing an iOS 11 review and see what it looks like. But for now, this is all in terms of rows. And before the dock, this is what it looks like.
Yeah, it is an interesting time because we've been living with iOS 11 for really only, what has it been? It's not even been a full 2 months. And as a result, my home screen, at least I'll use it as an excuse, is a little bit in flux too. I mean, I've been messing around with it on and off for the last few weeks, trying to figure out which apps should be in the dock, which apps should be in folders, which apps shouldn't be on the home screen at all, and that kind of thing. And that's why, like, my last row is a partial row because I haven't decided entirely what should be on the first page. And some of the things might migrate out of folders and onto the home page. Some things should probably be pushed down into the dock, but haven't quite decided exactly what to do there yet. The dock, I've probably got better organized than most things, but my last row includes numbers for the same reasons Federico has it there, which is we collaborated on some spreadsheets. I've got some other spreadsheets of my own tracking various things, finance type stuff, and it's been solid for me as well. I've got Twitterific in this row because Tweetbot is actually kind of broken on iOS 11. There's certain things, like I was trying to do a search yesterday and the search doesn't work at all, and there are various other things that don't work right, which, not their fault. The Tapbots has plenty of time yet to get that in shape for the launch of iOS 11, but I wanted to have a Twitter app that seems to be a little more stable on iOS 11, and I figured it was a good opportunity just to try out Twitterific again, because I do use it, but the main thing that's kept me from using it in the past is the lack of a Mac app. But now with the Kickstarter and the beta of Phoenix getting really stable, I've started to use that on my Mac, and it's nice to have, and they do sync, so it's nice to be able to try Twitterific and have it sync back to my Mac and see what that's like, because I've used it in the past, but not as extensively as Tweetbot, so I'm just kind of checking it out and seeing if it's something that I might move to.
Yeah, it's really, Twitterific has really become an excellent Twitter client. I still prefer the way that Tweetbot deals with multiple columns on the iPad.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the only reason why I'm sticking with Tweetbot is one of the primary reasons why is the second column, especially in landscape mode. It even works in split view. It's just a more efficient way to display more information about tweets on the iPad screen. It's, the iPad version of Tweetbot, I think it's one of the best features that the Tapbots have done in recent years of truly a great way to take advantage of the large canvas of the iPad.
Right. And my final thing in that row is a productivity folder, which I just used the default name for that folder. It's just got a bunch of little apps that I use less frequently, but still use for various things. You know, we've got 1Password in there, and Copied, and MindNode, and Pixelmator, which I use for assembling screenshots, and MindNode for mapping out ideas, and Linea because I like to sketch out ideas once in a while if I'm not using GoodNotes for that. I've got the WWDC app in there because I've been watching more of the videos over the summer since WWDC to get ready for the fall. We talked about Bear and Drafts. We've got pCalc in there, and a Notable, which is for marking up screenshots, a PDF viewer for checking out PDFs that I get sent, Terminology, which is my main dictionary app, and Full Contact, which we talked about 2 or 3 weeks ago on App Stories. I've got that in there for looking at contact information. Let's see, I've got a Wikipedia app for research, and Elk for figuring out conversion from euros to dollars, which we do far too frequently lately,
Yeah.
it feels like.
Yeah, I do that. I do that either with Google or with Siri.
Yeah, I do it with Google too, but Elk's pretty easy to do, so I like using that, and it live updates the conversion data, so that's kind of nice.
So that leaves the dock, which on iOS 11 on the iPad is going to be more capable than ever because you can put up to 15 apps on the big iPad Pro in the dock. And it's an essential part of the new iOS 11 multitasking, can be invoked anywhere. So I think it'll become the main way that most people do multitasking on the iPad. It supports drag and drop and all the other features of iOS 11. It truly integrates with split view and slide over at a system-wide level. So in my dock, the top left position, the app that I can instantly see is Safari, because I use Safari all the time, whether it's to open Mac stories or the backend of our website for the admin features, and just to read and browse. And Safari is all I do every day. I'm constantly browsing the web and looking for stuff. Files, because it's the new file manager in iOS 11, I'm switching to iCloud Drive for more and more of my files, so it makes sense to have the file manager down there in just next to Safari. Devonthink, because of all the reasons that I mentioned before on Mac Stories, it's excellent for automation, it's excellent for research. There's going to be links to the iPad Diary article that I did on Devonthink automation. It's where I'm keeping all of the screenshots and research material for my iOS 11 review, and I have workflows set up to archive that content into Devonthink. Mail is there because of drag and drop, and because I think it's going to be a great way to turn email messages into tasks somewhere else. I'm not sure I'm going to stick with Mail, but we'll see. Right now, it's the only option I can use if I want to write about it, but also if I want to have drag and drop with email messages. Speaking of which, you might see that Todoist is now in a folder, and I'm using OmniFocus, and that is part of this whole deal. I have the OmniFocus beta that they're doing with SiriKit support, with iOS 11 drag and drop support, and it's excellent because you can drop in stuff and it becomes a task, or you can dictate tasks to your assistant and Siri turns them into actual reminders into OmniFocus, which is great. So I don't know if I'm going to stick with OmniFocus, but it's an excellent app. It's great for power users. It doesn't have collaboration, which is why I cannot truly abandon Todoist. But this is not about switching right now. It's more about testing iOS 11 and testing drag and drop, because I feel the best way to understand new features is to use them in practice. So for a while, I'm going to be saving my individual tasks in OmniFocus using all these new methods. Apple Notes, because I use it all the time. Photos, because photos and screenshots, and Messages, because iMessage. I talk to people on iMessage all the time. And Slack, because it's the iMessage for work. It's where we organize the Mac Stories team, and also we Relay FM with other Slacks that I'm part of. It's where real-time communication for teams happens.
I have a question for you that I'm waiting to ask about where Workflow is.
Workflow is in a folder right next to Slack. There's a bunch of apps for work.
Oh, I couldn't see it in there.
And the reason why is I use Workflow primarily through the widget or through the action extension. Because I'm writing my iOS 11 review, I also haven't been spending a lot of time making new workflows. this summer. So it just thought it's best to keep it in a folder. But really, the reason to have a folder in there, it's not to demote those apps to a folder. It's because the dock allows you to bring in more than 15 apps with you everywhere on iOS if you pin a folder into the dock. So it's like I have 25 apps instead of 15 because I have some extras in there. They're not as important, at least right now, as those apps in the dock, but I can also bring them up with use drag and drop to put them in split view or slide over everywhere I am.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's something that I've been thinking about. I haven't done yet. And that's where that folder in my last row may end up, is because, as you'll probably see from my doc, I don't have 15 in there yet.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. It doesn't seem like you have all of these slots filled up. Finally, we get to working copy for all the reasons you mentioned, GitHub and sharing and archiving backups of our articles. Ulysses is where I write, where I'm working on my iOS 11 review as a separate project with individual sheets for chapters and sections. iThoughts, it's where I have the iOS 11 mind map. We talked about this before. That's where I'm constantly keeping next to Ulysses in split view to have a quick reference for my mind map. And the next app I cannot talk about, it's an iOS 11 app that is really useful to me that I'm keeping in the dock, but I cannot give you any details about. I'm sorry.
That's what I was going to ask you about that one, because I did not recognize it.
Yeah, and finally Tweetbot, because it's my Twitter client, and you can see the recents. Those are not icons that I put in there. Those are apps I recently used. You can see Todoist because I'm jumping back and forth between the collaborative environment of Todoist and OmniFocus for my personal tasks, and Canary is my home camera, and settings because I'm fiddling around with all the iOS 11 settings. That's my dock.
Okay, I'm going to run through mine relatively quickly because we're running out of time. But there's not much to say beyond what you did because they're very similar. Mine is divided up according to function more than anything else. The first three are Messages, Tweetbot, and Slack. And then I guess the fourth one is Airmail. Those are all communications apps for the same reason that Federico has them in his doc, at least the first three. I have them in mine as well. And then Ulysses and Notes, because those are my two main writing apps. Safari, because I am also in Safari all day long, every day, back and forth. Todoist, because that's my main task manager. It's handy to have it there, always ready. And then Files. And those last three I view as kind of more, I don't know, almost like utility apps, at least the last couple. And my recents are Excel, which is an app I use 4 times a year when we do the earnings call. And it's in there because I was doing the earnings call yesterday. The Settings app, because I was probably changing something in settings. And then Pixelmator, because I was doing something with a screenshot. And so that's what that's doing in my recents. And as you said, I'm missing a couple in here. I have a couple of slots open, and I am very much in transition, figuring out what goes in that doc. I think I'm going to get a folder in there. It's probably going to be that productivity one, which is really a grab bag of things I use from time to time, but not constantly. And I don't know what else might go in there. We'll have to see. Maybe music.
You got options with with those 1,500 apps that you keep on your iPad.
I do.
I'm sure you will find something to put in the dock.
You should see the game. You should see the games on the other pages.
No, I really shouldn't. See, that's the point. I really shouldn't see the other pages. So the first one is enough. That's it, folks. This is the first screen. Please do not ask about the other folders in John's home screens. I'm sure it's like a hellscape down there. So
it is. It's the hazards of doing game day. Really, there are lots and lots of games on all those other pages, as well as a bunch of other stuff. And my iPad probably is a lot less organized than my iPhone. It's just I don't use it quite as much as you do, Federico. I'm on my Mac a fair amount of the week, so I don't have it quite as fine-tuned as you do.
Well, whatever gets you through the day and make sure you can work for Mac Stories is fine by me.
Yeah, I mean, we're still doing this, so I think we'll be able to find a way to get along.
Yeah.
Even though you're the iOS guy and I still use a Mac like an animal.
And it's totally fine.
Okay, everybody. Well, on that note, I think we'll call it a show. Thanks again to our sponsor, MindNode. We'll be back next week with another episode. And until next week, you can find both of us at macstories.net And on Twitter, where Federico is at Viticci, that's VITICCI, and I'm at John Voorhees, JOHN VOORHEES. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.